Everyone thinks they've seen Wyatt Earp's face. It's in restaurants across Tombstone. It's in history books. It's the image Hollywood copied for decades. A hard stare, a thick mustache, a man who looks exactly like a legend should. But what if I told you that face might not be Wyatt Earp at all? What if the image people trust the most is completely wrong? Because here's the truth no one likes to talk about. Many of the photographs labeled as Wyatt Earp are misidentified. Some are honest mistakes, others are outright fakes. And the most shocking part, Wyatt Earp lived until 1929, deep into the age of photography. Yet historians today can verify fewer than 10 photographs that actually show him. Fewer than 10, for one of the most famous lawmen in American history. So, how does a man that legendary become almost invisible? The answer isn't simple. It's a mix of missing records, human error, greed, and something even more powerful: myth. Because once a story becomes legendary, people stop asking if it's true and start assuming that it is. Let's start with one of the only images historians actually trust, the Dodge City Peace Commission photograph from June 1883. This isn't just another Old West picture. This one matters. Wyatt Earp is sitting in the front row, second from the left, alongside Bat Masterson, Luke Short, and other known lawmen. And unlike most images from that time, this one is backed by real evidence. Contemporary sources confirm who's in the photo. Names match, records align. It's one of the rare moments where history and proof actually agree. But outside of images like this, things get messy, fast. There's another photograph that supposedly shows a young Wyatt with his mother. It surfaced through a chain of ownership that seems credible, passing through Wyatt's own secretary, then into a major collection. Historians examined it. A documentary even used it. But here's the problem. Even with all that attention, it's still not universally accepted. It lives in that uncomfortable space between possibly real and we can't prove it. And that's where most Wyatt Earp photographs exist, in uncertainty. Now here's where the story takes a darker turn. In the early to mid-1900s, America became obsessed with the Old West. Collectors started hunting for anything tied to famous names. In photographs, those were gold. But authentic images were rare, almost non-existent. And when demand meets scarcity, the truth becomes flexible. Some dealers made honest mistakes. They looked at an old photograph, saw a man with a mustache and a serious expression, and thought that could be Wyatt Earp. Others weren't guessing. They were labeling images deliberately, because attaching a famous name could turn a worthless photo into something valuable overnight. And once that label was attached, it spread. It showed up in books, then museums, then collections. And after a while, nobody questioned it anymore. It stopped being a guess and became fact, even when there was no real evidence behind it. But the real reason this problem exists goes back to something much simpler. Nobody was paying attention when it actually mattered. Photography studios in frontier towns took thousands of portraits, but they rarely wrote down names unless the person was already important. And during his time in Dodge City, Wyatt Earp wasn't a legend. He wasn't famous. He was just another lawman trying to survive in a violent town. The irony is brutal. The years people care about the most, the gunfights, the lawman days, the moments that built his legend, those are the years we have the least reliable images from. And by the time Wyatt Earp became famous, decades later, the people who could have identified those photographs were gone. Then Hollywood stepped in and blurred the line even further. In the 1950s and 60s, actors like Hugh O'Brian and Burt Lancaster didn't just play Wyatt Earp, they defined him visually. Their faces became the face of the legend. Later, Kevin Costner added another version, and slowly, something strange happened. People began to believe that real photographs of Wyatt Earp should look like these actors. So when they saw an old photo of a man who looked similar, they didn't question it, they accepted it. This created a dangerous loop. Movies shaped expectations, expectations shaped identification, and identification reinforced the myth. Now you might think modern technology could fix this. Facial recognition, forensic analysis, tools that sound precise, scientific, reliable. But when applied to 19th century photographs, they fall apart. Cameras back then weren't perfect. Long exposure times meant even slight movement could distort a face. Different lighting, different lenses, different techniques. All of it changed how a person looked. And then there's the obvious issue. People age. They gain weight, lose weight, grow facial hair, change completely over time. Trying to match faces across decades using flawed images isn't science. It's guesswork dressed up as certainty. We've already seen how badly this can go. In 2015, a photograph surfaced that supposedly showed Billy the Kid playing croquet. A forensic expert used facial analysis and claimed it was real. But historians quickly pointed out the truth. The photo had no provenance, no history, no documentation, and even the expert later admitted he wouldn't defend the match in court. That's not evidence, that's doubt. And then there's money. If someone finds a random photograph and convinces the world it shows a legendary outlaw, its value can jump from a few dollars to millions. Auction houses profit. Collectors gain status. Filmmakers get a better story. Nobody has to lie for the system to be biased. The incentive is already there, and once a false identification spreads, it's almost impossible to stop. Take the case of Billy the Kid's mother. For years, a specific photograph was widely accepted as her image. It appeared in books, collections, historical references. But later, the man who made the identification admitted the truth. He had no idea who the woman was. He lied, and even after that confession, the photograph still circulates today as fact. That's how powerful repetition is. Now, to be fair, we do have written descriptions of Wyatt Earp. He was tall, around 6 feet, with light-colored hair, blue eyes, and a mustache. People described him as calm, controlled, with a piercing gaze. These details appear across multiple sources, which makes them reliable. But here's the problem. That description fits hundreds, maybe thousands of men from that era. So finding a photograph of someone who matches that look doesn't prove anything. It just means the person looks the part. The only photographs historians truly trust come from Wyatt's later years, probably the early 1920s, when he was living in Los Angeles and consulting on early Western films. By then, he was known. Photographers documented their work. Provenance exists. But those images show an older man, a man decades removed from the gunfights and the frontier. Trying to use those photos to identify a younger Wyatt is like trying to match two different lifetimes. And this raises a bigger question. If we've been looking at the wrong photographs all this time, what else have we misunderstood? Clothing styles, body language, the way people carried themselves. Museums display these images. Books rely on them. Films recreate them. If the identification is wrong, everything built on it becomes questionable. And it's not just Wyatt Earp. Doc Holliday, Johnny Ringo, the Clanton family. So many faces from the Old West are surrounded by the same uncertainty. The deeper you look, the more you realize something unsettling. The visual history of the frontier isn't as solid as we think. So what's the solution? For historians, it's simple but strict. Demand provenance. Where did the photograph come from? Who owned it? What documentation supports it? Are there contemporary records confirming it? Without that, it's not proof. It's speculation. For everyone else, the lesson is even simpler. Don't trust an image just because it looks right. Just because it's in a book doesn't mean it's verified. Just because an expert supports it doesn't mean they're correct. And just because a photograph matches the legend in your head doesn't mean it shows the real person. So how many real photographs of Wyatt Earp do we actually have? Probably fewer than 10. Think about that. One of the most famous men of the American frontier, and we can barely confirm what he looked like. Because when he lived the life that made him legendary, nobody thought to preserve it. And by the time people tried to go back and find it, the truth had already slipped away. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just about Wyatt Earp, but about how history itself works. We don't just remember the past, we reconstruct it. We fill in gaps. We attach faces to names. And sometimes we get it wrong. So the next time you see a photograph labeled Wyatt Earp, don't just accept it. Pause. Question it. Ask yourself, where did this come from? What proves it? Who verified it? Because the difference between history and myth is often just one unanswered question. Now I want to hear from you. Which photo do you think is real and which ones feel fake? Do you think we'll ever truly know what Wyatt Earp looked like in his prime? Or is that part of the mystery that will never be solved? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep investigations into Old West legends, the truth, the myths, and everything in between, hit subscribe, because some of these stories don't just challenge history, they completely rewrite it.